am a nurse working in the cardiac care unit at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Brisbane's northern suburbs. I finished my Bachelor of Nursing 3 years ago, and I have been working casually in a few different roles since graduating. Earlier this year, however, I accepted a job as a casual registered nurse, or RN, at this hospital, and I've been working here ever since. In fact, I've just been offered a permanent role. I did very well at university and achieved good marks, and I've always gotten good performance appraisals from supervisors during my different positions, but this time I think I'm really excited, but I'm also really nervous. I've only just started working in a team with lots of different people, and I'm not sure how I fit in. I feel like I'm at the very bottom of the ladder, so to speak, but because I don't have a lot of experience, but I do have a couple of friends who have just started their first proper grad roles, and I am aware that it can be challenging. I'm worried that if I do something wrong, people are going to laugh at me or think less of me as a team member. But I know I have good technical knowledge, and I also feel like I'm going to have to do a lot of learning on the job. It's early days at the moment, but I hope that my fellow team members are going to help me out and respect me. And overall, I think it's going to be exciting, but also quite stressful. Like a lot of other nursing students, I wasn't sure where I wanted to work after graduating. As part of my nursing degree, we were able to do placements in different areas, and I really liked the experience of working in cardiac care. I found the emergency department too fast-paced, and I really struggled working in paediatrics because I have kids of my own and I just couldn't handle it. I'd go home after work and just feel like crying because some of the difficult cases really started to get me down. Most of my casual work has been in cardiac units since then. One of the things that I really liked about my cardiac care placement is that you often see a patient come in experiencing a heart attack or a stroke or even a heart transplant, and you can help them recover, and most of the time you get to see them walk out of the hospital, and I find that really satisfying. Sometimes patients will give you flowers and stuff like that, and you just know that they appreciate what you do, so I really enjoy that part of the job. Well, I know I'm very conscientious because I like doing everything perfectly. I don't think that that's a bad thing in healthcare because one mistake could end up harming or even killing a patient. So I know that I'm pretty well suited for this job. I really, really love looking after patients, and I get a lot of enjoyment from that. I think I'm also the type of person who likes a challenge, and nursing definitely provides that for me. I also enjoy looking at different ways to solve problems. If I'm faced with a difficult procedure, for example, I will try different approaches until I work out how to solve it. I don't really like taking risks, though. I think things through carefully and decide whether it's worth doing. After hours, I'm not really the type of person to go out drinking after a long day. I'd rather just go home and watch TV with my partner. So I guess if you had to call me an introvert, but that doesn't mean I don't like working with people. Of course, I like working with people, but I do find it hard to trust them sometimes. And I think in order to be a good nurse, you need to be able to trust your team members. So that's something that I believe I need to work on. I guess being a new member of the team makes me a bit hesitant to speak up about any problems or issues or concerns. In the past, I felt comfortable talking to my members of my team, but this is a team full of different people, including some very senior staff, and I feel like if I speak up, it's just going to create conflict. To be honest, I'm finding work really challenging, and I'm going home drained at the end of the day. I work in healthcare. I have to say that working in the healthcare industry is pretty stressful. There's lots of demands for nurses, but working in a public hospital means that there's a lot of pressure on us to reduce costs while working long hours for very little money. Trust me, no one gets into this job for the money. I currently work at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. It's relatively new. It was opened around 7 years ago. It isn't a bad place to work, but there's definitely a hierarchy. Senior management are seen as pretty dictatorial, and surgeons in particular are very powerful. I mean, they are very highly trained and they bring in the most money to the hospital along with the specialists and the anaesthetists, and they make sure that everyone knows about it. That's pretty standard in healthcare settings, though. I think that most people are trying to do their job well and they genuinely care about patients, but it can be hard to work with people with different backgrounds and experiences and perspectives to you. And so much of the work that we do involves working as part of a team. That's pretty much expected in healthcare these days. If you want to provide high quality care to patients, some of whom might be critically ill, you have to be able to work with other people. We have a really high volume of patients and we depend on other people to be able to do the work effectively. As I said, I had worked here on a casual basis as an RN for a few months, but I was just offered a permanent position in the cardiac care unit, and I was really excited. I accepted it almost immediately. Every unit is different, and in cardiac care, you'll often have patients who have experienced a major heart attack or have needed a heart transplant, for example, and often they have gone from the brink of death to actually surviving, and they are typically very grateful to be alive. It's really nice to see. I also help to look after patients who are experiencing congestive heart failure, cardiac dysrhythmia, cardiomyopathy, or angina problems. A big part of my job is providing post-operative care, and these patients are generally easy to look after and manage. They're usually really grateful for the advice and support that you provide, and it's a lot easier than dealing with angry drunks at the ED, for example. Well, it can vary a lot, but I will usually start my shift around 7 a.m. and we will have handover, meeting with the night staff, and they will discuss any issues or concerns to be aware of during the next shift. Most of my time will be spent caring for patients on the unit. This might include prepping a patient for surgery, monitoring and supporting those recovering from major cardiac events, or observing those patients who are prepping to undergo a heart transplant. It really depends on the patients in the unit at the time. I also spend a lot of time doing physical checks and observations, looking for trends in the patient's progress or decline. Nurses are often the best ones to pick up signs that patients may be deteriorating, so that's a really important part of my job. And throughout this process, I'm constantly communicating with members of my team about my patient's status and well-being. I also spend a bit of time with the patients' families because having family members in hospitals can be very stressful, and I think that they really need support too. As a nurse, the best part of my job is knowing that I've made a positive difference to someone's life. I chose this job because I knew I wanted to help people, and I'm lucky enough to be able to do that every day. I also get a lot of satisfaction from working as part of a team, even though that's also one of the hardest parts of the job. I think that we can learn so much from each other, especially when people come from different medical specialties, but at the same time, you have to deal with things like people's attitudes, personalities, and when they clash, it can often create conflict. So I do think it is a bit of a double-edged sword. Well, I just started working in my new team 4 weeks ago, and I have to admit it has been pretty stressful so far. We have a 30-bed unit and the beds are almost always full, so it's incredibly busy and we often don't get enough time for breaks. I come home at the end of a 14-hour shift and all I want to do is go to sleep. When I found out that I would be working in a team full of people from different medical specialties, I was really excited, but in reality, it has been tough. I guess we're more of a group at the moment because we don't seem to be connecting and getting along. We have 21 people in the team. That's 9 nurses, including myself and our team leader, 4 doctors and our allied health staff, 3 physiotherapists, 2 dietitians and 2 psychologists. On each shift, the team consists of 2 doctors, 7 nurses, including a nurse unit manager and 1 physiotherapist. We will often be required to work with cardiothoracic surgeons too. One of the problems is that I know that two of the doctors don't really respect nurses. One of them even told our team leader that nurses are too pushy and demanding and take up too much of his time. He also tends to be quite intimidating, and not many people are willing to question his decisions. He really, really doesn't like our nurse unit manager and undermines her all the time. I know that all of the doctors think that psychologists aren't even necessary in the team. They don't understand why it's important that patients have the emotional and practical support following surgery, because they only focus on the physical side of things. But for some patients, a heart attack or heart surgery can be a very confronting experience, and they need support to make changes and create a healthy lifestyle once they return home. Our allied health staff can help them to work out how to do that. And I feel like the doctors don't really understand what they do. There's also conflict between some of the nurses themselves, because our nurse unit manager isn't very good at communicating her expectations and clearly setting out the work that we are supposed to do. For example, one of my nursing colleagues thought that she was supposed to be organising follow-up care for every one of her patients once they were discharged, but it turns out that is what the social workers and psychologists are supposed to do. One of our patients was really cranky when they found out that they were supposed to be liaising with a different person. Another thing that happened is that I thought I was meant to be doing patient observations every hour, but it turns out you're meant to do them every 15 minutes following surgery. But no one told me this, and my nurse unit manager was really annoyed with me when she found out that I hadn't followed procedures. Also, 5 of the nurses are new graduates, so we're really learning as we go, which makes it challenging. No one even introduced me to the rest of the team when I started, and that made it really hard. It feels like we're all working separately rather than as a team. Another problem is that the unit is chronically understaffed. Everyone is understaffed in healthcare. That's not surprising, but it really does take a toll, and I worry that one day someone will make a mistake, and because they are so stressed and burnt out. No one really respects our nurse unit manager, so the doctors, psychologists and dietitians often just ignore her decisions. It just feels like there is no leadership at this point. I feel bad for her, but I don't feel like I can say anything because I'm so new in my role. It feels like people from the different professions are taking sides all the time and banding together rather than working together to make things better for our patients. All of the new grad nurses are younger, so we tend to spend a lot of time together, but the rest of the team are older and much more experienced, and they seem to have more in common, so it really does feel like there is quite a divide between the two groups. Well, it's been pretty tough, but I think things are slowly starting to get better. I talked to a friend who is a senior nurse at a different hospital, and she encouraged me to talk to someone at work about how hard things have been, and I have to admit this was the right decision. So I went and spoke to one of our nurse liaison officers, and to my surprise, she was actually quite supportive, and it turns out that there are a few other people who have expressed some concerns. Things aren't great at the moment, but I think they are definitely getting better. Probably the biggest change is that we now have a new nurse unit manager. This was a pretty drastic change actually, but it turns out that our previous nurse unit manager was really struggling in the role, and she was happy to stand aside and go back to providing one-on-one patient care rather than focusing on the administrative side of things. We now have a new leader, and she is really great. She's very experienced, and she's also really good at standing up to the senior doctors. If she believes that a decision is wrong, she will say something, so that's really supportive. The doctors also respect and trust her, and this has made a big difference to the climate in the team. One of the first things we did was we set aside an afternoon for all of the nursing staff to sit down and lay out expectations of us during each shift. So we now have a clear schedule of tasks that we need to complete, and that has made things so much easier. We also had a meeting with the rest of the team, and we were able to discuss how we could work together more effectively and efficiently. I think that some of the surgeons were pretty annoyed that they had to sit down and communicate with us, and I'm not saying it was easy, but I think that we understand each other much better now. Our nurse unit manager also showed the doctors how much work the psychologists do, and I think that they actually didn't realise before. So she showed them the results of a large patient survey about the effects of allied health support following surgery, and I think this was really helpful, especially as it showed that patients who receive support from both psychologists, physiotherapists, and dietitians have better outcomes. So I think that the doctors have realised now that allied health members of the team actually make a difference to patients and can improve their functioning following surgery. And this is really important. It made them respect their colleagues, and I think that this has really helped the functioning of the team overall, because it has made everyone realise that we really do have to work together. We also had the opportunity to talk about our roles in the team and how we can support each other more efficiently. For example, it turns out that the doctors wanted nurses to provide far more detailed notes on each patient's progress during the post-operative period, but no one had communicated that. It's something that we do as part of our routine, but now we're sharing the information and the doctors can see how we're contributing and making a difference to the patients' lives. On the whole, I think that we're still trying to work out the best way to function as a team, and it is going to take time, but overall these changes have really helped. I'm not saying that we're working perfectly, but things have definitely improved.